I flipped English football upside down, so all the Premier League teams went down to the National League South and North, and all the National League South and North teams went all the way up to the Premier League, and everyone else in the in-between flipped. We are now 10 seasons in, not in real life, in the game of course. So let's have a look at how the teams are looking after 10 seasons. Last video was at 5 seasons in, so there's been a lot of developments in the last 5 years. Man City and Liverpool were just getting into the Premier League. Some of those other Premier League clubs were still stuck down in the Vanarama National League South and North, so we'll see if they ever made it out of the league. Let's take a look. We're going to start down in the National League South and we'll work our way up to the Premier League. Then we'll look at Europe, we'll look at the Cups, we'll look at a couple of things that have happened over the years. And if there's any requests you've got, make sure you stick them down in the comments below. I'll see if I can get to them. But with FM23 around the corner, we better get through this quick. So let's have a look and see what happened after 10 seasons. So here we are down in the Vanarama National League South. You can see pretty much every Premier League team that started here made it up out. But one of them ended up back in, that was Crystal Palace. We did see Crystal Palace go back up into the Vanarama National League Conference a few seasons ago. Then they had financial difficulties and were relegated back down. There are a few teams that have dropped down into this division, Plymouth, Aldershot. One of the more interesting ones is that in the 9th season, Maidenhead relegated out. They were pushed all the way up to League One as a result of the flip. They've dropped all the way down to Vanarama National League South and dropped out of the division as well. But you can also see there's been a few interesting promotions the last few years. Charlton, Gillingham this year, but last year Bristol City and Braintree went up. Braintree of course had dropped down all the way down from the Premier League, all the way down to that National League South. Back up again now. They never dropped out the bottom and they might start their rise up again. So they were Premier League at one point. In 28-29 it was Cardiff and Luton that went up. 27-28 Millwall and Reading, and 26-27 Brentford and Watford went up. And then Vanarama National League North, you can see there are no Premier League teams left in. Burnley have probably been a Premier League team the most recently. They finally made it out. Preston are still stuck down there, as are Coventry, Wigan, Bolton. So there's some fairly big teams still down there in the Vanarama National League North. In the 9th season, Oldham relegated out of the Vanarama National League North. When they started, they were put into the Vanarama National League Conference. They were relegated in their first season. They managed to hold on for 8 seasons before finally succumbing to relegation that season. Colchester faced a similar fate in 28-29. They've been 6 seasons in the Vanarama National League North and they eventually fell out of the division as well. Altringham's relegation in 27-28 was the second time they got relegated from the Vanarama National League North. They came all the way down from League One a few seasons earlier and then fell out of the National League North and then again came back in and straight back out again. In the conference, we still have 1 or 2 Premier League teams here stuck after 10 seasons. Of course, there's only 2 promotion spots out of the division and it went to Stoke and Sheffield United in the final season. But you can see Villa's still there, Wolves still there, Leicester's still there, Watford's still there, and there's some other team, Brentford's still there, and there's some other teams that are close or around the, actually Nottingham Forest is a Premier League team right now, but there's other teams that have been in the Premier League, you know, Pompey, Blackburn, Reading, Middlesbrough Derby, Ipswich. Actually, most of these have been in the Premier Swansea, most of these have been in the Premier League at some point. So all these teams are stuck down in the Vanarama National League North now. There hasn't been many more point deductions, but it's an issue for these teams. Braintree getting knocked back down there. Of course, we did see them go up a minute ago. But over the seasons, you see it's mostly been Premier League teams getting promoted. So Sheffield United and Stoke this season, but previously Fulham and Bournemouth, they were in and around Premier League. Brighton and Norwich, West Ham and West Brom in 27-28, Leeds and Newcastle in 26-27, and Leeds and Newcastle in 26-27. League 2 is often a crossover point as there's a big disparity in points between the teams at the very top just coming up, the former Premier League teams coming up from the divisions below, and the teams from the divisions above much weaker, free falling down the divisions. So you can see between there, Fulham 104 points and Solihull Moors at the bottom there, only 19 points. Solihull Moors, interestingly, only just came down from the season before. They'd held on in League 1 for a long time. In League 2, because there's only 2 promotion spots into it, but 4 promotion spots into the division above, you see some interesting promotions up. So Welling and Tonbridge have managed to go up. Those are both teams that fell out of the Premier League earlier on in the save, so they're starting to find their way back up again. Season before, Brighton, Norwich, Port Vale and Hungerford, again a team that was up in the Premiership. In 28-29, West Ham, West Brom, Crawley and Havant and Waterlooville. 27-28, Newcastle, Leeds, Leyton Orient and Leamington. Leamington were up in the Premiership in that first season. They got relegated down. They've come all the way down to League 2, but they're going back up again. We'll see how far they got back on their Premier League journey in a minute. And in 26-27, Everton, Tottenham, Bristol Rovers and Walsall. So some of these teams, Premier League teams, will be leaving it quite late to get back towards the Premiership as well. League 1 is really interesting after 10 seasons. You can see right there, Eastbourne Borough went up as champions. Norwich in second. Brighton did not win the playoffs. Chippenham won the playoffs. Blaraki and Hungerford are there. Leamington are back there as well. Actually, what's interesting is Hungerford there went all the way down to League Two and they nearly came back up again. So the fact that they came down and almost went back up again. But Bristol Rovers at the bottom there, Bristol Rovers came up into this division, as did Port Vale, and both of them are going back down again. But there's some much smaller teams that have managed to hold on for the 10 years in League One at least. So you can see Boston United there, Concord, Brackley, Chester. Previous years promoted teams include West Ham, West Brom and Curzon Ashton. Curzon Ashton we did see playing in Europe a few seasons earlier. In fact, they were the first Premier League winners in the save, so they're going back up now. Only the Championship, but that's not bad considering the size of the team that they have there. 28-29, you can see Newcastle, Leeds and Southend went up. 27-28, you can see it was Everton and Spurs. So Everton and Spurs going up together as a unit, along with Stockport. 26-27, Arsenal made it up into the Championship with Southampton and Salford going up with them. So the Championship, West Ham made it out of the Championship with Mansfield and Rotherham. Mansfield and Rotherham are two teams that went up into the Premier League. Mansfield, we started down in League Two, which is where they are anyway, but they went up in that first season, and because they were ahead of the curve, ahead of the Man Uniteds, ahead of the Liverpools, they managed to get up to the Premier League really quickly. They dropped back down again, but they're going back up again. Same with Rotherham. Rotherham started way down in the National League Conference, and because they were a year ahead every year of Manchester City, of Liverpool and of the other Premier League teams, they kept going up and up and up until they reached the Premier League. They did drop back out, and now they're back in it, the final season. And you can see, of course, they're beaten out Spurs there. Spurs stuck in 7th, West Brom in 9th. There's Curzon Ashton's return to the Championship, 14th, not bad. Previous seasons, you can see Newcastle, Northampton and Leeds went up again. Spurs missing out. Grimsby, Forest Green going close. We've seen them in Europe before. 28-29, Everton, Oxford City. Mansfield went up again. So Mansfield had a little bit of a yo-yo period between the Championship and the Premier League. And Spurs, of course, missing out once again on going up into the Premier League. 27-28, you can see Arsenal and the Hamptons, Northampton and Southampton going up together. So the interesting one here is Spurs, who never ever make it back to the Premier League. They're stuck there in the Championship, maybe forever. Okay, Premier League. Maybe it's no surprise, but the winners for the last 5 years have been Manchester City. They have won every season since they got promoted back. You see Sunderland, that is the last time Man City and Liverpool were not in the division. Since then, it's been Man City first and Liverpool second. But there have been some good also rounds. So if I come to the most recent season again, here, if we look at this, you can see Chelsea third, Everton fourth. You can see also we got the coefficient places back in England. They did disappear for a while. You see Man United finished fifth, but Weymouth, see Weymouth and Notts County have been in and out of those Europe positions. They finished above Arsenal that season. They finished above Sunderland, who won it a few seasons before. They finished above Southampton. They finished above Newcastle with all their millions. So Weymouth and Notts County have done really well to cement themselves in the Premier League. Those have been the teams that have probably come out of this the best. You can see there, 6th and 7th. The season before, 6th for Notts County. Weymouth were a little bit lower down. They were in 13th. But before that, Notts County 7th again. Season before that, you see Notts County got Europe again, up in 5th. And 26-27, both of them got Europe in that first season with Man City and Liverpool. In fact, Sunderland were the team that dropped off massively after their first season in the Premier League. Weymouth and Notts County have been really consistent in getting up towards the top end of the table and into Europe spots, despite the gradual introduction of all those Premier League teams. The teams for Weymouth and Notts County are quite interesting as well. You can see in the Weymouth team here, they got Mohamed Darami, they got Borna Sosa, they got Balogun, they got Fabio Carvalho, Angelino, Chengazunda. They got some really interesting players. Jamie Shackleton, Yango Herrera, Ruben Vinagre. Some really interesting players in that Weymouth team. Same with Notts County, Christian Sanchez in goal, Tariq Lamptey, Tendon Mengi, Kayo George, Max Kilman, Mateus Vina, Babakari Samare. Some interesting players that they've got in that have helped them in the Premier League and in Europe. In terms of their stadiums, Weymouth are now playing in a 16,000 seater stadium and Notts County are playing in a 39,000 seater stadium. So they've both upgraded their facilities as well. The FA Cup winners for the last few years, Man United won it in the final season. Arsenal the season before that, beating Man United. Liverpool beat Darlington in the 28-29 season. Liverpool beat Chelsea in the 27-28 season. And the 26-27 season was Liverpool. So Liverpool won 3 in a row, and then it was won by Arsenal and then Man United. Carabao Cup, Chelsea won the most recent 2, then Liverpool won 2, and then Liverpool were in the final but were beaten by Manchester United in 26-27. Community Shield, Man City has won this pretty much every year since they were promoted into the Premier League. Man United winning the only one before that. Papa John's Trophy, Liverpool have won that the last 3 seasons. I don't know how they're still in the Papa John's Cup, but They are. They beat Man City 3-2. We've messed up the Papa John's somehow. First, it started with the Vanarama National League North and South teams getting into the Papa John's Cup, and now they've stayed in there despite the fact that they're Premier League teams. I don't know how the Papa John's Cup has got so messed up by us flipping the league tables. Liverpool have won 3 of them, and then Man United won the 2 before that. The Builder-based trophy is interesting. Brentford won that last season, Stoke the season before, Fulham, West Brom, Villa. So they're all Premier League, or, you know, Stoke's not Premier League, but they have been relatively recently winning those the last few years. In the Europa Conference League, you can see Notts County actually made the final this season. They lost to Lazio, but they got all the way to the final, lost 2-0. But even better news, Bayern Leverkusen won it the year before that, but Notts County actually won one. They beat Vitesse in penalties in 28-29. Man United also won it in 27-28. Weymouth also reached that final. So it was Weymouth 1, Manchester United 2 in the final of the Europa Conference League in 27-28. In fact, since the 25-26 season, English teams won it 4 times in a row. So you can see Liverpool won it, and then Man City beating Atlanta, then Man United beating Weymouth, and then Notts County beating Vitesse, and then the most recent 2 seasons have been via Bayer Leverkusen winning, and then Lazio beating Notts County. In the Europa League, Valencia have won the most recent version of that, beating Napoli. Mainz beat Sociedad the year before that. Betis beat Ajax the year before that. But Liverpool won it in 27-28, beating Atletico Bilbao on penalties, and Roma beat Lazio the season before that. So only one English winner in the Europa League in the final 5 seasons. Maybe because of the drop in the coefficients and less English teams playing in the European competitions meant that they didn't quite go as far. And in the Champions League, you see Bayern Munich, and in the Champions League, you see Liverpool managed to reach the final this season. They lost to Bayern Munich. Season before, it was Juventus and Milan. Season before that, Juventus and PSG and Ajax. So the English teams have sort of been out of it a little bit for the last few seasons. PSG beat Bayern in 26-27. So we haven't had an English team win the Champions League since all the way back in the first season when Man United beat Borussia Dortmund in the final. There's been 2 World Cups and 1 Euro since we last looked at the saves. So let's see how the international teams got on, particularly England, because we want to see if this has impacted on how well England do in those international competitions. So you can see here, this is the World Cup in 2026. England finished top of their group with Venezuela and Mali, but then were knocked out in the 3rd round by Belgium. You can see the other teams going through: Switzerland, Morocco, France, Italy, Netherlands, Brazil, and Argentina. In the quarterfinal, France, Belgium, Italy, and Netherlands go through. Semi-final, Netherlands, Italy, Netherlands going through on pens. So the final, Italy won the 2026 World Cup. Then it was the 2028 Euros, and you can see here, England got through their group, Group B, with Ukraine, Belgium, and Scotland. They did lose the match to Ukraine 2-1, but they got through their group. There's a lot, it's quite easy to get through your groups in the Euros now. You can see how many teams get through. In the 2nd round, they beat Poland. In the quarterfinal, you can see Spain, Portugal, England, and Germany went through. That is a strong semi-finals we got coming up. Semi-finals, Spain beat Portugal, England beat Germany 3-0 in Rome. And then in the final, England beat Spain 1-0. So England did actually manage to recover their international team. They lost to Serbia a few seasons before getting knocked out in the Euros. They've recovered their national team and won the Euros in 2028. But does that help them in the next World Cup? Well, here is the next World Cup. They went through a group with the Gambia and Iran. I wouldn't say that was the hardest group, but they got through their group nonetheless. In the next round, they beat Chile on penalties. 3rd round, they beat Brazil 4-1. Quarterfinals, they beat Italy on penalties, revenge there. Semi-finals, they beat Spain 2-0 to set up a final with France. And in the final, England win 1-0. So England have won the Euros and the World Cup on the back of this. So I wonder if, you know, all those teams getting flipped really shook up the youth system in English football, distributed some of the money more easily, and created a lot better youth prospects. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just imagining it. I mean, the game does seem to favour England anyway. It does quite like building prospects for the English teams. I imagine the England team is mostly made up of players from the big teams anyway. So indeed, we can see here the England team: Dean Henderson's at United, Reece James still at Chelsea, Phil Jeffrey is a regen, he's at Man United, Luke Mbete, he's at Man City, Chilwell at Chelsea, Bellingham at City, Declan Rice at Liverpool, Gerrard Roach, he's a regen, he's at United, but Phil Foden's at PSG. We saw some of these teams leave the Premier League. Sancho went to Monaco, Marcus Rashford still at Man United, Aaron Ramsdale, Chelsea, Trent still at Liverpool, Emil Smith-Rowe, Sunday Johnson at Manchester City, Curtis Jones still at Liverpool, Tomori at Man City, so he came back into English football, Oliver Skipp at United, Jude Bell at Chelsea, Finn Darman, this guy's not a regen, he must be quite young in real life. He's at Augsburg. Trevor Schabala at United, Saka at City, and a regen, Etienne Tipple, who's at Chelsea. So most of those are at Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, or Manchester United. Really interesting. No Arsenal players in there, no Notts County or Weymouth players in there. So it sort of shows how they've come into dominate those top 4 positions in English football once they got back there. You know, 1 or 2 players at Monaco, at PSG, Borussia Dortmund, but otherwise, you know, it's really 4 teams that have dominated that squad. So that was English football 10 seasons after I flipped it upside down. Let me know how your team did down in the comments below. Did you spot them? How did they get on in their final season? Would you have expected them to have been higher or have been lower? Write it down in the comments below. While you're down there, make sure you give this video a like as well and hit that subscribe button. I've got lots and lots of Football Manager 2023 stuff on the way, including some experiments just like this one. I don't think we'll do this one again for a little while, but maybe we'll try it again in the FM23 engine a little bit down the line. And if you, like me, can't decide on a save for FM23, I think I'm doing a mystery shirt. It's down there somewhere, just down to the side. But I've got this video here on perfect save ideas to do in Italy. If you fancy doing a save in Italy, check this video out. There's some good ones in there. Some people have put some good ones in the comments as well. Check it out.